The Bible and saint stories that I grew up with, and maybe more importantly, the ones that I came to know as an adult, they all told a similar story. A person wants one thing out of their life, but God intervenes somehow and gives them a more difficult purpose, which somehow makes them holier. It's Moses not wanting to lead God's people into the promised land, but then ultimately relenting, taking up his staff and going to confront Pharaoh and lead God's people to the promised land. Or Ignatius, wanting to live a glorious life as a soldier, and then getting hit by a cannonball, and ultimately, as he's recovering in bed, receiving a new mission from God that ultimately becomes the Jesuits. This theme comes out of people wanting one thing for their lives, and then God gives them something that they don't want to do, and that is what makes them saints. But what if you've been told all your life that your mission is to subvert your queerness, to fight against your same-sex attractions? Is it wrong to believe that's not God's call in your life? Or to reject it? Is it wrong to want a better life for yourself? Part 1, God's plan. So let's start here. You may not care what some people in the church say about your sexuality, and I applaud you. That's incredible. My husband, for example, from a very young age had an instinct that the people who told him, especially coming from the church, that his sexuality was sinful, that what he was doing and who he was wrong, that they're crazy, that they're not to be trusted on this issue, and he didn't pay them any mind. And that to me is beautiful and wonderful. So if that's you, say a little prayer of thanks for how blessed you are and go have a wonderful, anxiety-free day. But a lot of you grew up in a situation like me. The church told you that your sexuality or your gender identity is a sin. And you believed them, you trusted them, because it comes from God, it comes from the church, it comes from your family. And believing them, trusting them, is the most understandable thing in the world. In Southeast France, in a small community called ours, there's a parish church. And inside this parish church, there's some pews, a pulpit, and then off to the side, a little confessional. This is all very normal, but that's where things get a little bit weird. The threshold that leads to the confessional, it's solid stone. In fact, it juts out of the ground a few inches. But when you get to it, it bows in the middle. And the reason is because it's been worn down by that many people coming to confession with the parish priest who lived there. He was so well known as a confessor that people would come from all over France to confess their sins to him. So much so that over the years, those thousands of people that came to confession to him actually wore down the stone that led to his little confessional. Now, by Catholic priest standards, that is one holy man. The catch? The church didn't think he should ever become a priest. His name was John Vianney, and in the 1800s, every seminarian was expected to learn Latin because everything that the church taught was in Latin, and the Mass was in Latin, and everything church-related at that time was in Latin. But John Vianney wasn't any good at Latin. He was, in fact, terrible at it, and so thus all of his studies, which were done in Latin, he struggled with. So much so that his superiors simply assumed he would never become a priest. Certainly not a good one, because he couldn't learn any of it. But despite the fact that he got bounced around from seminary to seminary because he was struggling so much, they kept pawning him off to different seminaries, he eventually got ordained. And then when he was, they sent him to this little tiny town of ours, which had 230 people in it at the time. In other words, they sent him where they thought he would have the least impact. Go send him to a place where he can't make any trouble. This guy who, yeah, we ordained him, but like, he's not going to be a good priest. Go send him where no one will hear him. But God used him in ways that the other bishops and priests could never have foreseen, because this man that they tried to hide away in a small town, he brought all of France to come see him. Everybody in France crossed that threshold to have their sins confessed to this man. Stop and take that in for a moment. Nobody believed that John Vianney could become a priest, that this was God's plan. But ultimately, he ends up becoming such a beautiful, good priest and pastor that the church makes him a saint, and in fact makes him the patron saint of all priests. He's such a good priest that they say he is now the model for what all parish priests should be like. And yet in the time, in the moment, nobody thought he was capable of. That's how God actually plans a life. So here's the question. How do you know what God's plan is? Part 2. Disobeying becomes obeying. Well, for anyone keeping tabs at home, I will grant that St. John Vianney never actually disobeyed his superiors. He didn't get ordained in a clandestine ceremony or anything like that. But knowing your vocation, like being called to the priesthood, is different than knowing your sexuality or gender identity. It's a helpful analogy to make between the two, but vocation isn't identity. Your identity is about knowing your humanity itself. Most of us have been told by the Catholic Church, our church, that we are not capable of living our full humanity, that our gender is not our gender, that our love is not real love, that our relationships are not real relationships, that our sex is not even real sex. For those of us that have been on the receiving end of that, it's not a stretch to say that we've been told that our lives are not real lives. Not really. So then you've got to ask yourself, is that true? When I, as a gay man, fall in love, is that evil? Think about it like a Catholic. Does it have the actual effects of evil in my life? Or does it just not result in a fertilized egg? When you deny your gender, does it hurt or help you? How does it compare to being forced into your gender assigned at birth? And when I'm with queer community, queer family, am I being built up by people who see the real me? Or how does that compare to faking it to fit in with Catholic circles? So maybe another way of asking the question is, who do we owe obedience to? Those who are lying about us, or to God who made us? Those saint stories of the suffering person who has to deny what they want to do in life in order to go follow God's plan are wonderful. They really are. But that's not what's happening in your life as a queer Catholic. Not getting to be a soldier is not the same thing as denying your sexuality, something any queer soldier could plainly tell you. Wanting a better life for yourself is the most Catholic thing that you could do. I'm not talking about wanting a better life in the sense of wanting fancy clothes, designer clothes, a yacht, and all of that. I'm talking about wanting a truly better life, one in which you love yourself, accept yourself, in which you're able to be honest with everybody about how you feel and who you love and who you want to be with. Denying all those things is terrible. Falling in love and being part of a family that fully accepts you, that's not just a dream worth having, y'all, that's God's plan. So the question is, are you willing to follow it? Y'all, my name is Patrick Flores and welcome to our new video series here at Vine and Fig. We are an affirming community and resource for queer Catholics, and if you like this video, make sure you subscribe to our channel because we have a lot more videos coming soon. You can support our work via Patreon, via the link below in the description. You can follow us at Vine and Fig Co on social media, or you can find us on our website at vineandfig.co. I'll see y'all again soon. Love y'all.